It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, I had to bring Wes McArtor from NextEra back on the end of the day with Ray. We're going to do an update on the numbers. And folks, I got to be honest with you, I'm not seeing the trends climbing the way I was hoping. Wes McArtor, how are you doing, man?
Doing great, Ray. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, you know, Wes, your data is important, and the first question out of the box I got to ask you, are you seeing more senior leaders in the imaging channel in our industry looking at this data?
As a matter of fact, we are. Obviously, when sales activity kind of comes to a halt as a result of the lockdowns and the transition to the tethered workforce, you've got to continue making money in service, and those margins become more and more important. So analyzing our data for those opportunities has become considerably more visible than it's been.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this question. A lot of the manufacturers here based in the United States, you're all over the place, but their corporations are back in Japan. Do you get executive levels from the Japan marketplace look inside the data?
Yeah, the manufacturers that use our service are obviously very keen to understanding what's going on around the globe and the differences between, for example, Europe and how they handled the lockdowns versus the United States and how that could ultimately impact their businesses and their forecasts going forward. So, yeah, we've got a significant amount of activity happening from our Japanese manufacturers.
That's sweet. So, the greatest news in that, congratulations, Document Imaging Channel, because, getting people to look at data and actually try to execute off that data is extremely important in these trying times. So tell us what we're all waiting to hear. We started out, Wes, around 12 billion pages was in the database. That was the run rate pre-virus. Where are we at right now?
Well, we're slowly coming back. It has been a slow slog. The bottom kind of fell out in May, where that page volume dropped to about 2.8 billion, and it's slowly come back up now to about 4.3. It has been a steady increase since the bottom hit in May, but it's been very slow. So that hasn't come back to almost to a third of where it was. It's kind of the same things happening with call volume. It peaked out at about 750,000 calls a month. It's back up to about 480 now.
Wow.
Obviously, some of that call increase happens because some of these machines were shut down for a while and created service activity when they powered them back up again. But the parts usage numbers aren't coming back anywhere close to where they were either, which indicates the machines just had service activity because they were idle or off for a while, and then they're firing it back up, having a jam or some other kind of issue.
Well, I noticed, sometimes, when I was working with you guys for that 10 months or so, if the call types aren't put in the system right, that can generate some issues. And, we have different consultants in the marketplace trying to define call types. But is there any trends that show you that some of these calls could be just people doing like customer service calls because they got a population of technicians that aren't really busy? Get your ass out there and see a customer. Do we see any of that going on?
Yeah, there were a few courtesy calls and preventive maintenance calls that were being generated as a function of trying to maintain staffing levels. Obviously, most of our customers treat their employees as family and would do anything possible to avoid having to furlough them or lay them off during this time. So there was some of that going on, but a lot of the customers were actually shut down, and a lot of these customers didn't have access to the equipment. So,
Wow. Well, that's a big decline in calls. We see some of that coming back. We see some of the volumes coming back, but nowhere where we want it to be, obviously. Let me ask you this question. So we know that there was this huge surplus of unused inventory inside the database of the dealers and the manufacturers that you work with. I mean, it was a lot, $28-30 million or something. So where are we at now with the, just this inventory problem? And are they using your ability to transfer that inventory between players? So if one dealer has too much, you can work with the other dealer and try to get them corrected on inventory.
Yeah, there's been very little interest in doing the inter-dealer, especially like dealer groups like SDG or CDA or somebody where we could provide that service. We do still have our partnership with OEM Connect where we can buy and purchase obsolete inventory and try to rehome it someplace else. That process is picking up. The COVID lockdown kind of accelerated a certain amount of that obsolescence because that decline in parts usage meant that part was sitting in inventory now for 2 or 3 months and didn't get used the way it would normally get used. So the amount of what we call trickle headed for obsolescence actually increased because of this lockdown. The worry is what's going to happen as we start to move to that next leasing cycle period where, these machines either don't get renewed or the customer doesn't doesn't buy new equipment, and then what happens as a result of that. So this getting a handle on this inventory obsolescence problem for our industry is really, really critical.
Well, I was looking at some of the financials from the manufacturers. They're all starting to publish their financials, and some of the comments, the forward-looking statements, if you will, they're talking about how they really need to get control of parts and inventory. That's a good place to cut costs. So let me ask you this question. I'm going to use my friends at Xerox as an example. If Xerox has non-Xerox branded equipment, and we know they do through their global, the old global business model, where they're servicing other equipment, would you work with an OEM like a Xerox or a manufacturer, even though they don't manufacture except for production, but Xerox, would you work with Xerox direct to get them parts from dealers for other brands that maybe dealers have obsolescence on? I mean, does that ever come up?
Absolutely. Our whole overstock parts network program analyzes what they have in inventory that they can't possibly use, meaning they have no serial numbers, they have no equipment that could use it. And then we try to find another company or customer within our database that is still using that part. Once we do that, we can match them up instantly and go, here's an opportunity to move that item from one place to another. We actually did that for Global back in the day when we were actually rebalancing their inventory across their whole network. Worked exceptionally well. The critical thing about inventory is that 99% of the inventory products out there today, which is probably the ERPs and the custom platforms that the manufacturers use, all base inventory off of usage. Mm-hmm. And I can't emphasize this enough, because what the difference between our program is and everybody else's is if I have, let's say I have 100 machines out in the field and the lease expires and I rotate those 100 pieces out for brand new equipment, right? Mm-hmm. So I just swap them, right? Usage hasn't changed in the system, right? But my population that can use that has. And so it's going to take months as the system starts to realize that, oh, I'm not using this part anymore. Our inventory process recognizes right off the bat that I just lost 100 pieces of equipment that can use that part. I need to make adjustments today, not wait for this trickle to happen down the road. That's why we get so much obsolescence, because we're in a constant cycle of churning our base, and the inventory platforms are all keyed off of a usage trend, right? Mm-hmm. Not off of what we call a demand trend. So if we know the equipment needs this part and that a piece of equipment's no longer there, it no longer needs the part. You've got to make the adjustment right away. So if we're using our parts platform, not only would they be faster, they would be more adept and accurate at adjusting those inventories or ceasing to order inventories so that they can use up what they have while they still have equipment in the field that can use it.
I don't get it. I just don't understand how any dealer owner could walk back in that damn parts room, look at all this crap and not ask a question. Why do I have 9 months worth of inventory, 6 months worth of inventory? I mean, when I was working with you, I was writing about this. Why do we should only have like 6 weeks of inventory. If we got 6 weeks of inventory, and that's probably too damn much. But 6 months is ridiculous. And so that's the part where it's frustrating. Come on, dealers, you're looking at the data, but we got to get a hold of these parts. And I'm hoping that more dealers will understand how that can benefit them, because I don't understand why you want to have these parts. They're not assets.
If
they're obsolete.
The key thing is giving your parts department the logistics tools that they need to make better decisions, right? If the platform can only tell them what usage trends look like and how to set them in max against usage, and doesn't have the sophistication of predicting what that usage will do if we lose all this equipment or when we lose all that equipment, change your tool. Get a tool that actually helps that person make better decisions.
Well, I hope they start paying attention more, because obviously, we got the vaccine on the horizon. This thing's not going to last forever. We're sure as hell not going back to 12 billion pages based on that population. The only way we're going to get there is to add more base. The only way we're going to do that is to consolidate. So we have to have consolidation. We got to have people buying each other up. Your data's tremendously important with that. Can you just give me a 5-second, doesn't have to be long, but Wes, if I'm looking at buying another dealership, and I'm a $10 million company and I want to buy a $10 million company, what's the best thing that you can do for me that I can't do on my own?
Well, obviously, the analytics that comes around looking at your manpower requirements and the efficiency of the dealer you're buying relative to your own. So if I buy a dealer and I can absorb 100% of that base with the existing staff that I have, I can turn that base into instantly more profitability because I'm not having to add labor expenses according to that. So that's one thing. obviously analyzing what inventory I have. Most dealers can do part of due diligence and look for obsolescence, but what they don't, they look for usage trends, right? Same problem. They don't look and go, well, how many pieces of equipment are out there can use this part? So even though I show a usage of 1, what if I have 100 and I only need 1, right? So that's kind of a critical part of that due diligence process that needs to be looked at. So the real key thing is finding out how much efficiency you can drive out of that operation. That's what every acquisition company always hopes to do. I'm going to buy them, make them more efficient, therefore extract more profit from them. But in reality, they're not able to make that transition.
Well, let's hope they start using it. You know, I made that hypothetical, consolidation between HP and Xerox, and I'm thinking you put all that data together and you look at that base. Wow, that could be amazing. And it's amazing for manufacturers. It's also amazing for the dealers or even these private equity groups too. Wes, is there anything you want to add before we end?
Yeah, just one quick number. Since you're kind of the A4 Revolution guru, the trend line is still showing more A4 product going out than A3. That transition started happening in April, where the data was showing more A4 product actually being installed, and the population trends still show that. So A4 is still outpacing A3 in population.
There you go, folks. I remember when people fought it. I remember people said it would never happen. You're Crazy Ray, but guess what? Crazy Ray got another one right. Wes, it's great having you on, and I look forward to having you on again, because we all know this: status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Thanks, Ray.